Hello, welcome to Miniature Realms. My name's Stuart. Today I'm asking what were the top 5 Warhammer Army books?
Miniature Realms is proudly sponsored by Counter-Attack Bases. They stock a wide range of counters, gaming aids and movement trays for multiple game systems and offer custom items to suit your club or even your podcast or YouTube channel. Make sure you check out their old world compatible range. It's expanding all the time. New ranges are being added soon. Look at these fantastic generals tokens to help those of you who are forgetful remember in-game effects and spells and things like that. And look at these old world legacy army token sets as well. Again, more of these are being added all the time and very nice they are. Check out the link in the video description.
Now that is a completely impossible question to answer, but it's a bit of fun and I'm going to share with you my top 5 at this moment in time. Ask me again next year and I may have changed my mind depending on what my current projects are. And there are just so many to choose from, especially for an old man like me who's been playing for an awful long time. And no doubt many people's favourites will be from the era they started playing or maybe the era they were most successful. But I want to hear about what your top 5 or top 3 or top 10, if you really want to, in the comments below. So be that a first edition small army list, maybe the 6th edition Ravening Hordes booklet, or even the 8th edition digital formats. Can you remember these? As far as I can remember, only available to use on your iPad. They worked in landscape mode and you scrolled sideways and there was loads of little interactive parts for you to click on. So if there's an image or a picture or something like that, you could click on it and it would expand, and you had lovely maps like this. You click on the little battles and you get a little bit of text pop up. So some really cool elements are probably a little bit ahead of its time, and they didn't continue after the end of 8th edition. I'm not sure if they did them for other game systems as well, but I definitely purchased 3 of them during that era and I thought they were pretty cool. They did feel like something you'd want to own the hard copy book as well. If you're old-fashioned like me, some 360s of miniatures, which doesn't seem to work anymore on my iPad. I'm guessing that the software now doesn't quite work with these old digital productions, which as I say, showing their age in themselves now. But it was a really interesting and unique way of displaying an army list. You click on a little box and the stats and the rules will pop up. Some of those functions we see now in many of the army building tools. Very, very cool, and I probably should do a separate video on this rather than taking up too much time here. So let's get to it. None of my choices are from the current range of arcane journals. I enjoy them an awful lot, but I don't feel like we've quite got there, and they definitely don't have the depth of the older army books. There's also nothing from 5th edition, Dogs of War. I really didn't engage much during that period, and like I said, many of my choices are arbitrary based around the things that are most nostalgic to me or remind me of my favourite times playing the game. To continue giving it all away before I've even started, I didn't choose any 8th edition books, and I really enjoyed playing 8th edition, and they are beautiful looking glossy books, but I didn't feel that they added anything extra special over the things I enjoyed from the previous ones. I am a huge fan of the 4th edition writing, the lore writing, more so than maybe the look of the game during that period. And even though there is a huge nostalgia hit still for me, I really like the simple way in which the lore is written and it's set out to the game that we love today. And as a whole collection of books for an edition, if I had to choose one edition only to play in, the 6th edition probably has the best collection in my opinion. They are very, very good throughout, feel purely like Warhammer, and as a game play pretty well at the same time. Towards the end of 6th edition and the beginning of 7th edition, those books and themes tend to merge a little bit as well. There's almost some double edition books for some armies, and the end of one and the beginning of the other felt very much like the same thing. So some of my favourite books happen to also be 7th edition. So without further ado is Warhammer Armies from 3rd edition. So this is where it started for me. The first army book that I had, and I used to play games of Warhammer Fantasy back in 3rd edition, and it is very much of that ilk, that era. It's Nigel Stillman and friends, and you can see how different it is to what we're used to today. Loads and loads of tables everywhere for your spells, for pretty much everything under the sun. But there are some things that start to show the formation of original Warhammer Fantasy, be that the magic items and armour. Some of them have some sort of familiar aspects to them, or the point of them is a little bit heavier in certain ends. They're still incredibly cool. There's rules for war machines at the beginning of the book, some that go on to be really famous, like the Snotling pump wagon. And there's just too much in this book to really show it all to you, and nor should I. This is about a top 5, not about reviewing this army book, but it's flicking through this again is something I'd love to come back and talk a little bit more about in the future, should people like that kind of thing. So many of the units are recognisable to us now for current sort of Warhammer the Old World players and players for Fantasy throughout all the different editions, but there are many things that are extremely different as well. High elves are very different in this book, very much more like a Tolkien-esque style of elves alongside the Wood Elves, Sea Elves there as well. The Empire is very different as well, so is Bretonia. They're very much based on miniature ranges that would be historical miniatures at the time, and those have evolved an awful lot. But you do get these iconic army shot pictures there with Dave Andrews, and you have the very famous Brian Ansell picture as well, which many people recreate still today with their armies, be that a 40k or no matter what. I think the imagery is extremely recognisable. Skaven have maintained the look that we still see today. They're obviously just much bigger today, but some armies have changed a great deal more. But there's buckets and buckets of nostalgia in this book for me, and I really enjoyed building my original armies, sitting down with my best friend at the time and working out army lists on bits of paper with pencils, much the way it should be. I don't do it that way anymore, I'm too lazy now, but it was a great time, loads of nostalgia, some really sort of cool early stages of certain armies. You can see their growth into the current editions, and there's just some really weird stuff like your Slan army list that we don't see now, of course, Undead before it was split, and then your ally contingents, just separate army lists which were slightly reduced in what you could choose for Mir, which you don't see now. Some things I'm not even going to show on the screen that are very outdated and of their era now, that would never make their way into modern army books, Zotes and things. Just go and check it out. You can find copies of this online, go and have a flick through and see the stuff on there, because it is really, really cool. And lots of the sort of inspirations for Warhammer the Old World can be seen today. You've got separate Norse armies, you've got some Astalian and Talian regiments, just very, very cool. And after that real blast from the past, we move forward all the way to 4th edition, still pretty ancient, but Warhammer Armies Empire. As I've already alluded to in my incredibly long introduction, I love the way the lore is presented in the 4th edition books. I think it's really important. It was fundamental in establishing the lore at this time for the game that we know today. Much of it was either guided by or written by Rick Priestley, and I think this is a Rick Priestley book. I like the way it's presented. It's written in a style akin to a history book in many ways, and as a historian of the past myself, I can definitely get my head around it in the way that it's written. I don't mind modern day books. I'm talking about all of Games Workshop here, not just Old World. I'm talking about 40k as well. I do think they're a little bit overwritten at times, a little bit too flowery in the language, and a little bit more straightforward goes a long way. And I think I've found that in these books. Maybe it's just my age and I connect with it because of that. But I'm a big fan of it. It's incredibly detailed. It sets out the story of the Empire, and in many ways the core of the Old World. I view the whole of Warhammer Fantasy in the Old World through the spectrum of the Empire. Not only one of my favourite factions, I also understand the world through the way that it's presented, and many of the way that it's presented to us as readers is through the eyes of the humans of the Empire. It seems to make sense. We are humans, we can connect with the story in that way. There's loads of cool stuff in this book, like the Halfling Hot Pot and some really cool dioramas and heavy metal pages, which is something you'd see at this stage. Articles from White Dwarf ripped out and stuck in your publication. That people will complain about that these days, but at the time I loved it. It was really, really cool. At its core, the army list itself, or even the miniatures at that time, don't super excite me. It's very much, this is your source book for the Empire itself as a land that I wished at that age that I could wander through and that I roleplay games in, and it made a lot of sense to me from that perspective, and that's why that it's my number 4 4 in the list. In third place, we're sticking with 4th edition, and we're moving on to Warhammer Armies High Elves, a book like the Empire book that I covered over on the Jordan Sorcery channel as we reviewed some of the earlier army books, which was loads and loads of fun. And the reasons for choosing this book are very similar to that of the Empire. I love the way the lore is written, so important to the wider history for the world of Warhammer. They are ancient, and with that they interact with many of the different races during different periods, giving some wider insight into the sort of the history of the world of Warhammer. And again, this is just incredibly easy to read and well laid out for the same reasons that I've said before. Not Rick Priestley this time as Andy Chambers and Bill King, because they have some really cool things like lore all the way through, little bits of stories, little Gotrek and Felix turn up all the time in this edition of the army books. The maps are fantastic, and I just love it. Love the way that it's laid out, love the way that the lore is presented, and it's easy and to read and understand and digest without the overuse of a sort of flowery language. And there's really cool things like heavy metal articles by Mike Mouvet, who was the original painting god, and I definitely looked up to him, even getting away with a painting article which is essentially lots of text and the pictures of 2 finished models there of Tyrion and Teclis. Again, we have White Dwarf articles in the form of a battle report this time, and this is a really famous one, the Battle of Red Axe Pass, and it is just great. It's high elves up against lots of goblins, and I love it. It's great to read. It's probably a bizarre thing to have in many ways in an army book these days, and I imagine it might be slated if it's an army book these days, but I really enjoyed it at the time, and it's part of the reason why I just love the introduction to the world of Warhammer that these 4th edition books gave us. Now, as promised, I have skipped 5th edition and moved straight into 6th edition for my number 2 in my top 5. And the fact that this isn't number 1 is probably going in the book. But yes, it's the Dwarves, and a fantastic entry for their 6th edition army book. By this stage, the game has moved on a great deal, and I really do love the contents of nearly all of these 6th edition army books. That they're relatively balanced until we get to the end. And they've lots of little extra snippets that you don't see in later army books, and many of the ideas are taken from these and put into Warhammer the Old World. We see them today in some of the armies of infamy, and I just like the way they're presented overall. The real grimdark feel that you got from 6th edition was very, very cool. We're starting to see some newer plastics, not the best plastics always, but they definitely had character. And I'm a big fan of the plastic dwarfs from this era. They're nowhere near as good as sculpts as the 7th edition ones technically, but they definitely had a vibe and a feel to them that I prefer. But overall, I do like the way the army books are presented. The lore is absolutely fantastic. There's some great army shots in this, including the late great Paul Sawyer's Kazakh Bulg expeditionary force with lots and lots of firepower. They're really, really cool, and it just says everything about dwarves and what dwarves should be to me. And I think personally that gets lost a little bit in their next book, their 7th edition book. As much as I liked it and used it more than I used this one, this for me was kind of peak dwarves in many ways. Just had the right feel for dwarves, felt very Warhammer the Old World or Warhammer dwarves, and I love it. And there's scenery articles in there. The lore pages look absolutely stunning and beautiful, really evoking that 6th edition feel as well. And there's things I mentioned earlier on, aside from articles about how to play your dwarves, there are the different flavoured army lists within it, the guild expeditions, the Throng of Khazad-Drang, the royal clans which we see today, and it's just fantastic. Loads of really great ideas which I wish they continued with in many of the 7th edition books. Now, in first place, and this was a really tough one for me, and I very nearly chose the 6th edition version of this book, and I've already mentioned the 4th edition version of this book as one of my favourites, and that could have been number 1 as well. In fact, any of these top 5 could be number 1 on a given day. But for my first place book, favourite ever, if I could only have one army book, it would be the 7th edition Empire book. Now, I suspect this might be a slightly controversial choice, seeing as all my love for the earlier books of Warhammer Fantasy and all of my love for 6th edition as well. But for me, this had enough of the feel of some of those earlier books and modernised them slightly. By 8th edition, maybe it got a little bit too modern for me, but by Graham McNeill, the writer of many great Empire stories, including the Sigmar series, which is absolutely fantastic. Still lots of the grimdark feel in this book. The artwork is very much akin to a step from 6th edition, and I love it. I love the presentation inside as well. It was slightly smarter, slightly better put together, and then felt like a more professional publication overall. The quality of the print was better, and the photography of the miniatures was better as well, and that's partly why this earns its place over the 6th edition version of the book, because for me it balances nicely that feel between a really serviceable army list, which was okay to play. They definitely weren't top tier at this stage, but that didn't matter. Some really cool older artwork, but some really nice modern artwork that didn't lose that feel of the grim darkness of Warhammer Fantasy. And there were some new miniatures at this time, and I know it's not everyone's favourite, but I'm a big fan of the stage troops of this era that we still have now as a modern game. They do have too much detail in places, but they are lovely characterful miniatures. And I love the old 6th edition Landsnake style. In fact, I'm going to be painting some very soon and putting them in my Renegade Crowns army. It doesn't mean I don't like those, but in terms of a slightly more modern miniature, these are fantastic, and they definitely scream Empire to me. Don't get me wrong, I'd love a modern day Landsnake version of that sculpt as well to live alongside them, so you can have different looks for different Empire states. It would be absolutely perfect, but we are where we're at with it, and there were some new plastic kits at this stage which added to the existing kits, gave a really nice overall plastic army, which I absolutely loved and played most in 8th edition. Lots of dwarf play as well, but mostly it was Empire. And like I said right at the beginning, this is how I view the game of Warhammer. It's through the eyes of these humans, and I think there was a perfect balance between the grim darkness, between the early days of Warhammer Fantasy that I played, Wolfrup version 1, and the more modern stuff. We saw the colours of the Empire pages, that like the uniforms, and heraldry book later on as a really nice sort of companion to it. This book was just fantastic. Definitely a little bit of nostalgia there as well, because it reminds me of a time playing 7th edition before 8th edition came out, that I just thought the game was in a really good place, aside from the Demons, Dark Elves and Vampire Counts issue at the time with balance. There was a lot about the game that I really liked. 7th edition as a core game was a really nice updated version of 6th in many ways, and while I preferred an awful lot of the army lists in 6th edition and the way those books looked, as I've already mentioned, there were some standout books like this that I felt that maybe edged it as well. But I do really like that 6th edition Empire book, and it was very close to pipping this one, so maybe I'll just keep them both, one in each hand. So the question really now is, what are your top 5? I really want to hear in the comments below to give you some ideas of what you might pick. I've got my podcasting comrades from Miniature Realms to send me their top 5s as well. So Mark from the Old Welders has put in 5th place the Wood Elves 6th edition book, in 4th place the Empire 4th Ed book, just like me. Lost in the Dam there in at 3rd. Warhammer Armies for 3rd edition, which I chose as well, in at 2nd edition, and he has Raveling Hordes at his number 1 book, so another compilation list there. Dan, who's been helping me out on the channel for years with the Hobby Hour and now the Road to 40k, in no particular order, has picked the Dwarfs, the Vampire Counts, the Beasts of Chaos and the Dark Elves, all from 6th edition, so a man after my own heart with really liking 6th edition as a real collection. And then as his 5th and final choice, he's going for the Champions of Chaos 5th edition book, which is a kind of an extra supplement to go along with the Realms of Chaos supplement. So if you have enjoyed the video, give it a like, drop that comment below, let me know what your top 5, your top 3, just your favourite. I don't mind, pop a comment below and share what your favourite army books were over the eras. I'd really love to hear from it all. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already done so. There's an awful lot of Warhammer related stuff on there, mostly Warhammer the Old World now, loads of painting tutorials and unboxings and reviews, as well as fun chatter like this. And this is supposed to be fun. If anyone's got annoyed by any of my opinions here, it is just fun. And like I said at the beginning, in a year's time you ask me again what my top 5 are, they might be different. This is just the way I feel today. Thank you to all my patrons for all the help and support that you give me. If you'd like to be a patron as well and help support me in making content like this, I love making 2 to 3 videos a week, but it does take an awful lot of time, especially the painting tutorials and videos like that. They just take hours and hours and hours to work on. I love doing it, but the financial support is the only way I can keep doing it. So please do check out the link in the video description for that, and also check out the channel sponsor, Counterattack Bases. But thank you very much for watching. Take care, and I'll catch you soon.